I found it on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after she walked out of the building for the last time. A small gift bag, shoved in the back of my desk drawer, hidden under a stack of quarterly reports I kept meaning to file. Navy blue, white tissue paper, a little card tucked inside, just my name, written in her handwriting. Her handwriting. I sat down slowly. My chair made that familiar creak against the hardwood floor, and for a moment the whole office felt impossibly quiet. It was 7:14 a.m. Nobody else was in yet. Just me and that bag and the sound of my own breathing. I didn't open it right away. I just held it in both hands, the way you hold something you already know is going to cost you. The tissue paper rustled, and something in my chest, something I'd spent 11 months carefully, methodically burying, shifted. Her perfume. Faint, but there. Something cedar and clean that I would recognize in any room on earth. I set the bag down on the desk, pressed my palms flat against the wood, looked at it. I thought, this changes nothing. I thought, put it back. I thought, you already lost this. You let this go. You made the right call. You were professional. You were careful. You were everything you were supposed to be. And you walked away clean, and that was the right thing to do. And it still is the right thing. And putting this bag in the trash right now without opening it is the smart. The card fell out, just slipped free from the tissue, paper, and landed on the desk, face up. And she'd written more than just my name. She'd written, "For when you finally stop running." I stared at that line for a very long time. And then I started to remember. Her name was Diana Voss, CEO of Voss and Mercer Consulting, 41 years old, Harvard MBA. The kind of woman who walked into a room and didn't announce herself. She didn't need to. The room just recalibrated. Temperatures dropped by 2 degrees and everyone sat up a little straighter without knowing why. I had been hired as her executive assistant 18 months before any of this started. My job description was 14 bullet points long. In practice, it meant I was the person who stood between Diana Voss and the rest of the world. I controlled her calendar, her travel, her calls. I knew which meetings she dreaded and which ones she could do half asleep. I knew she took her coffee with exactly 1.5 sugars, not 2, not 1, and that she ate the same turkey sandwich every Tuesday because it was the only day the cafe downstairs made the bread fresh. I knew she had a playlist she only listened to when a deal was going sideways, and that when the playlist went on, everyone on the floor pretended not to notice and quietly moved their deadlines. I knew her in the way that only proximity creates knowing, not intimacy, not friendship, something more functional than that, and somehow, over time, something much harder to define. We had a dynamic. It worked. She was direct, occasionally sharp, allergic to small talk, and completely incapable of pretending she wasn't the smartest person in any given room. I was organized, fast, and had learned very early that she didn't need me to be warm. She needed me to be accurate. So I was accurate. And when I was accurate, she noticed. Not with praise, exactly. More with a kind of stillness. A pause before moving on. A glance that lasted 1 beat longer than necessary. That glance. I filed it under professional efficiency and moved on. For a long time, I was very good at that. It was my second year when things started to shift, though I didn't recognize it as a shift at the time. I thought it was just gravity, the pull of working closely with someone who demands your full attention. I thought everybody must feel this way about someone they work for. That specific alertness when you hear footsteps and recognize them before you see the person. The way a room felt different when she left it. I thought, this is what it means to be good at my job. I thought, she is exceptional, and I am calibrated to her exceptionality. I thought, this is completely normal, and I am not going to think about it anymore. And then one afternoon in March, She sat down across from me at the small table in her office, not at her desk, at the table, which was where she sat when she wanted a real conversation, and she said, "Tell me something about yourself that I don't already know." I blinked. "I'm sorry? We've worked together for over a year." She tilted her head. One finger tapped the table twice, slowly. "I know your filing system, your handwriting, your opinion on every vendor we've considered this quarter, and the fact that you hate the new espresso machine. I don't know anything about you. It seems like an oversight." I didn't know what to say. She watched me not know what to say, and something in her expression, not a smile, not quite, but something in the neighborhood of a smile, crossed her face and was gone. "Take your time," she said. And I sat there, in the afternoon light, across from this woman I had spent 14 months organizing my entire professional life around. And I felt, for the first time, or maybe for the first time honestly, something I could not immediately file under anything at all. I told her about my sister. It was the first thing that came to mind. The safe thing. My younger sister Maya, who was finishing her doctorate in environmental science up in Vermont, who called every Sunday at exactly 9 a.m., no matter what was happening in either of our lives, who had once driven 8 hours in a snowstorm to bring me soup when I had the flu, and then driven back the same night because she had an early seminar. I told Diana that story. It was easy. It was true. It didn't cost anything. She listened without interrupting, which was unusual. Diana Voss was not, typically, a patient listener. She processed fast and spoke before you were done, and somehow was always right about where the sentence was going. But she listened to the whole story about Maya and the soup and the snowstorm, and when I finished, she said very quietly, "You're lucky." I said I knew. She looked at her hands. I looked at my hands, and the room did something it hadn't done before. It held still, like it was waiting for something that neither of us was going to say. I went back to my desk. That night, I thought about that pause for approximately 2 hours before I told myself I was catastrophizing and went to sleep. The next 3 months were what I would later call, privately, the season of almost. Everything we did was something we had done before, in the same offices, with the same coffee, and the same files, and the same precise professional rhythm we had built. Except now there was a texture to it, a warmth underneath the efficiency that hadn't been there before, or that I hadn't noticed, which amounted to the same thing. She started asking me questions, not work questions, real ones. What did I think about the new gallery that had opened downtown? Had I read that thing in the Times about the housing crisis? What was my honest opinion? Not the professional one, the honest one, about whether the Hartley acquisition was the right call strategically or just the safe one. She asked like my answer mattered, not in the way that a good manager asks an employee, in the way that someone asks when they want to know what you specifically think. I started telling her. I noticed the moment that happened, the moment I stopped giving her processed, professional answers and started giving her real ones. It was a Tuesday. She had asked me about a board decision I fundamentally disagreed with, and instead of saying something measured and diplomatic, I said, "I think it was a mistake, and I think in 6 months we're going to be in a much harder position because of it." And she looked at me with something I can only describe as satisfaction, deep and quiet, and said, "Good. I've been waiting for you to say what you actually think." After that, I couldn't pretend I was still just being professional. My awareness of her changed. It's the only word I have for it. She had always occupied space in my attention. But before, it was the way an important task occupies your attention. After that Tuesday, it was something else. Something more personal, more frightening. I started noticing small things. The way she held a pen between 2 fingers when she was thinking, rolling it slow and rhythmic. The sound of her voice when she was tired. Slightly lower, the consonants softer. like something in her dropped its guard after 6 p.m. The way she said my name, Lauren, with a precision that felt specific to me, like it was a word she had considered. I started noticing that I noticed these things, and then I started trying very hard not to notice them. My best friend Priya, the only person who knew me well enough to read between the lines of anything I said, called me one night during that stretch and said, "You sound different." "Different how?" "Distracted," she said. "Like you're listening to 2 conversations at once." I said I was just busy. She said, "Mm-hmm." Long pause. "Priya." I didn't say anything. "You said mm-hmm like you were saying something." "Lauren, I love you. I am saying nothing. I am simply sitting here being entirely neutral while you figure out whatever it is you are clearly in the middle of figuring out." I hung up. I lay on my couch in my apartment, and I stared at the ceiling, and I said out loud, to no one, to the ceiling, to the version of myself that already knew and was waiting for the rest of me to catch up, "This is not what it is." The ceiling did not agree. It was the November gala that broke something open. The firm held it every year, a client appreciation event at the Meridian Hotel downtown. All marble floors and low lighting, and waiters circulating with champagne that nobody really needed, but everybody accepted. My job was to be there early, run logistics, make sure Diana's schedule held through the evening. I had done it the year before. I knew what to expect. What I didn't expect was to turn around from the registration table and see her walk in, and actually feel in my body, the breath leave me. She was wearing something dark blue. She wore dark colors often, but something about this was different. Her hair was down. I had never seen her with her hair down outside of a conference call on a Friday, when she thought only I was still in the building. She looked, not different. She looked like herself, but unguarded in a way the office never allowed, and it hit me somewhere behind my sternum and stayed there. She spotted me immediately, crossed the room. "Everything under control?" she said. "Yes," I said, with a steadiness I was genuinely proud of. She looked at me for 1 beat, 2, and then said, "You look nice, Lauren." I said thank you. She moved on to greet the first of the clients. I turned back to the registration table and had a very brief and very private moment of absolute disarray before I put myself back together. The evening went the way those evenings go. I worked. She worked. We orbited each other in the professional way we always had, and I was very careful and very together and absolutely fine. At 9 o'clock, most of the clients had filtered out, and I was packing up the last of the registration materials when she appeared beside me. "Drink?" she said. Held out a glass of sparkling water. She'd remembered I didn't drink at work events. I took it. Our fingers didn't touch. I registered the not touching with more precision than was reasonable. We stood at the edge of the room, both of us looking out at the last few clusters of people, and she said quietly, "Thank you for tonight. This ran well because of you. I want you to know that." "It's my job," I said. "Yes," she said, "but you do it like it matters to you. That's not something you can hire for." I turned to look at her. She was still looking at the room. Her jaw was set, the way it got when she was saying something she'd been sitting on for a while. "Diana." "I know," she said, and she still didn't look at me. I didn't know what she knew. I didn't ask. The silence between us had weight and temperature. It felt like the moment before weather changes, when the air goes perfectly still. Then someone called her name from across the room, and the moment dissolved, and she walked toward the voice, and I stood there holding my glass of sparkling water, feeling like I had stepped to the edge of something vast, and then been pulled back without being able to choose. I went home and did not sleep. I lay in the dark and went through it carefully, methodically, the way I handled every problem that scared me. Break it into components. Assess each piece. Reach a rational conclusion. Diana Voss was my employer. She was exceptional at her work, and she treated me well, and she had started to treat me like a person she genuinely respected, maybe even liked, and that was valuable and good and something I should be grateful for, and absolutely nothing else. I was aware of her in ways that weren't professional. That was the component I couldn't file anywhere. I was aware of her. Not in the way you're aware of someone you admire. Not in the way you're aware of someone who intimidates you. In the way you're aware of someone whose presence you start to need. Quietly, incrementally, until one day you notice the specific quality of their absence when they're not in the room, and you understand that you have been measuring rooms by whether or not they're in them for longer than you realized. I said it to the ceiling that night. Not out loud, just inside, where the version of me that had already known for a long time lived quietly. I said, I think I'm in love with her. And the ceiling didn't respond, and my heart didn't stop, and nothing exploded. It just settled. The way a fact settles when it's finally been said. Not with fanfare, but with the quiet thud of something true landing in a place where it had always belonged. Then I thought about what it meant. Who she was. Who I was. In relation to her. The 18-month professional relationship that had built something I would never be able to name in any context anyone would call appropriate. The power differential. The reputation. Hers. Mine. Everything I had built in this firm. I thought, this is not possible. I thought, you have to be very careful. I thought, you already know exactly what you have to do. I stopped letting her conversations linger. I started giving professional answers again. I responded to her texts in under 3 minutes. Fast, efficient, impersonal. I found reasons to not be in the room when she was alone in the room. I was correct and courteous and reliable and invisible in the ways that counted. She noticed. Of course she noticed. It took her 11 days. We were in her office end of day, going over the next week's schedule, and she suddenly put her pen down and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her before. Not her board meeting face. Not her difficult client face. Something rawer. She said, "What happened?" I said, "I don't know what you mean." She said, "Lauren." Just my name. The way she said my name. I held her gaze. I made sure my face said nothing. I said, "Everything is fine, Diana. Is there anything else for tonight?" Long silence. She picked her pen back up. "No," she said. "That's all." I left. I made it to the elevator before my hands started shaking. But before we continue, if you made it this far, then this story has already touched something in you. That feeling of wanting something you've decided you can't have. That specific kind of silence that costs more than speaking ever would. Hit the like button right now. It's the smallest thing, and it means more than you know for stories like this to keep reaching people like you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and ring the bell. That's how YouTube lets you know when the next story drops on this channel. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever pulled away from someone to protect yourself and realized too late that the distance hurt more than the risk would have? Tell me. I read every single one. And tell me what city you're watching from. I put a heart on everyone. Now, back to the story. She resigned in January, not because of me. I want to be absolutely clear about that. The board had been moving in a direction she fundamentally opposed for the better part of a year. A merger that compromised everything the firm had been built to be. Diana Voss did not compromise on the things that mattered to her. I had watched her refuse to over and over for 18 months. I knew this about her the way I knew the rest of her. She called me into her office on a Thursday afternoon and told me before she told anyone else. I wanted you to hear it from me, she said. I sat across from her. The afternoon light came through the window behind her, and I thought, with a clarity that felt almost cruel, I am going to miss this light. This specific afternoon light in this specific room. When? I asked. End of the month. I nodded. I said, the transition planning will need to start next week if we want. Lauren. I stopped. She had both hands flat on her desk. She was looking at me with the full weight of her attention, the way she looked at something when she had decided to stop being careful about it. I'm not asking you to stay, she said. That's not fair to you. You've built something real here, and whoever comes after me should be lucky to have you. Okay, I said. But I want to say something before I go, and I need you to let me say it. My hands were in my lap. I pressed them together once. I know what you did, she said. In November, when you pulled back. A pause. I understood why. I even thought it was probably the right call, professionally. I wasn't in a position to disagree with that logic. She stopped. The room held still. But it cost me something, she said. And I've been sitting with that for 2 months, and I'm not going to walk out of this building without you knowing it. I looked at her. I really looked at her. Not the way I'd been carefully training myself not to look at her for the past 2 months. All of it. The gray starting to thread into her hair at the temples. The way she sat with both feet flat on the floor like she was bracing for something. The fact that she was telling me this. The fact that she was telling me this. Diana, you don't have to say anything. She held up one hand. I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed you to know that it was real. What was between us this year. Whatever it was. A breath. It was real. I sat there for a very long time. I thought about all the things I had told the ceiling and never told her. All the careful professional distance I had built between the truth and the version of myself I kept in this office. All the times I had heard her say my name and let it land somewhere I didn't acknowledge and moved on. I thought about Priya saying, "You sound distracted, like you're listening to 2 conversations at once." I thought about the bag in the drawer. The gift I hadn't known was there until it was too late. I thought about the specific weight of arriving too late to something you could have had. And something in me, the part that had been very organized and very professional and very careful for a very long time, finally, quietly, stopped. It was real, I said. For me too. She looked at me. I know, she said. And for the first time since I had worked for her, her voice came out unsteady. I stood up. I quit, I said. She blinked. Lauren, I quit, I said again. Not angry, not dramatic, just decided. I'm submitting my resignation today, effective the same date as yours. I am not going to spend one more day in this building operating under a set of rules that were protecting something that no longer needs protecting. A beat. That's my decision, not yours. Mine. She stared at me. I had never seen Diana Voss look surprised before. Not really. She was too fast, too prepared, too perpetually 15 steps ahead of any room she entered. But she looked surprised now. Her mouth had opened slightly, and she was looking at me like she was recalculating something from the ground up. You just... she started. Yes, I said. Lauren, you can't... Diana, I just did. Silence. And then, slowly, something happened to her face that I had never seen there before. A kind of softness, not weakness. It wasn't weakness. It was never weakness with her. It was the absence of armor. Like she had been carrying something heavy, and had been given, for the first time, permission to put it down. Okay, she said. Just that. Okay. The cost was immediate and concrete, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. My manager called me in the next morning. The HR director was in the room. They were professional, they were careful, and they made it very clear, in the way things are made clear without being stated directly, that resigning the same day as the CEO, under the circumstances, would not look neutral. That the timing was something people would draw conclusions from. That my professional reputation was something they hoped I would consider before I made a final decision. I sat in that room, and I listened to all of it. And I thought about the drawer, the gift in the back of the drawer that she had left there for me to find. For when you finally stop running. I said, I understand. My decision stands. I cleaned out my desk that afternoon. Priya helped me carry the boxes to my car, which she had offered to do before I'd even asked, because she knew me, and she didn't say a single thing until we had loaded the last box and were standing on the sidewalk in the cold. Then she said, Tell me what happened. So I told her, all of it. The months of it, the gala, the ceiling conversations, the drawer and the card, and Diana's face in that office when I said I quit. Priya listened to every word. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You quit your job for a woman who you hadn't technically even gone on a date with yet. Yes, I said. Okay, she said. I need you to know that I support you completely, and also that this is the most unhinged thing you have ever done. I know, I said. Are you scared? I thought about it honestly. Yes, I said. But I'm more scared of what I would have been if I'd stayed. She pulled me into a hug on the sidewalk, the cold November air around us, and held on for a moment longer than she needed to. What came after was not clean. 3 people at the firm who I'd considered genuine work friends went quiet. Not hostile, just absent, the way people become absent when they don't want to choose a side. A reference I had been counting on became vague and non-committal. There were 2 months of uncertainty that felt, some nights, like I had made a catastrophic error. Like I had burned something down that I didn't know how to replace. Diana called me the afternoon of my last day. I was still in my apartment with the boxes I hadn't finished unpacking, sitting on the floor with a cup of tea gone cold, wondering who I was going to be now that I had stopped being who I had been. I heard, she said. I know, I said. Lauren. The way she said my name. You didn't have to do that. I know, I said again. I wanted to. Brief silence. Then, Can I take you to dinner? Yes, I said. No hesitation. Saturday? Saturday, she said. Good. And then, very quietly, before she hung up. For the record, I found the bag this morning, the one I left in your drawer before I left. It was still there, unopened. I closed my eyes. I found it, I said. I opened it this morning. A pause. And? She asked. And it's why I'm answering this call, I said. She let out a breath, soft, like something she had been holding for a long time. Saturday, she said. Saturday, I said. I sat on my floor in my half-unpacked apartment with the cold tea and the scattered boxes and the specific silence of a life in transition, and I felt, not settled, not certain, not safe in the way I had tried so hard to stay safe, but real. Like myself. Like the version of me that had been waiting quietly behind all that professionalism for a long time, finally allowed to exist without apology. The cost was real. Some of it I'm still paying. Some of those friendships didn't come back. The professional rebuilding took longer than I wanted it to, but I was there for all of it. Present. Awake. Not managing myself into half-living. Diana brought me coffee before our third conversation, 1.5 sugars, without my asking. I looked at her. She looked at me. I pay attention, she said simply. I know, I said. So do I. The gift in the bag, by the way, was a small compass. Brass. Old-fashioned. On the back, engraved, so you always know which way is yours. I keep it on my desk. Not because I need it to find direction anymore, but because sometimes you need a reminder that someone saw you clearly, saw the running and the hiding and the careful management of your own heart, and loved you in the direction of yourself anyway. The greatest courage I ever found wasn't quitting. It was the moment I stopped organizing my feelings into something safe and admitted what was true. Everything else followed from that one act of honesty. If this story reached something in you, if you've ever stood at the edge of something real and chosen the organized version of yourself instead, write Compass in the comments. I'll know you made it all the way here with me. And if you want more stories that don't look away from the complicated, beautiful truth of what it means to love someone, click the video on your screen right now. A big hug. Until the next story.